Well, hello everybody, and it's Thursday already this week, and I can't believe how fast the week is going. Today, I have the wonderful privilege of introducing you to someone who's going to be a very important part of all of our lives across the Derbyshire North East Circuit over the next number of years. I'm talking about Mark Carrick. Mark is a probationer minister who will be arriving on circuit on the 1st September and will be sharing in ministry with me and with the rest of the staff team, particularly working with myself at Central and also sharing at Balborough and at Clown as his particular places of focus. But of course, as a circuit minister, we'll all get to know him in different ways. I've known Mark now for a couple of years. I got to know him through his time in candidating when he was offering for the ministry. As you probably know, I was working as someone who supported people through candidating by running a monthly Saturday course up in Leeds, and Mark came along to a number of those to share and to help him in exploring his calling. And then when he was in training, again, he came back for a short placement of several weeks, which we managed to stretch as much as we could up here in Bolsover, and sharing with us there at Hillstown and at Duckmanton, and just been such a blessing to us when he was here. I know the ladies from Bolsover, when we had our ladies' night during Community Week, he was such a blessing with the tuna bake that he made. That was a real hit, and they still speak about it to this day. But he's just such a gracious man, and it's been an honour to journey with him so far. It's going to continue to be an honour to be alongside him as his minister in oversight over the next couple of years. I asked him to take part today in sharing something of his testimony and then also sharing some reflections on God's Word with us. He's provided with me lots of material, so I'm going to use his testimony today, and then tomorrow I'm going to share his scriptures and reflections. So Mark's going to be with us over the next 2 days. So God bless you as you listen now to Mark's contribution for today. Over to you, Mark.
Good morning. So I've been asked to give you a little bit of an introduction, a bit of a testimony, I suppose, into who I am and what brings me here. I remember going to something when I was at work, and we went on a training course, and they spent the morning going around the various candidates, asking them to introduce themselves. And it's always one of those things that's a bit weird and makes you feel a little bit awkward, I suppose. You've got to think of something that nobody else knows about you, or your favourite colour, or what your pet's name was when you were 5. And it's all just a bit false and silly at times. But I went to one, and it was actually much better. And they asked, who are you? Where are you from? Give us a little bit about your background and what role you perform in work, and what you hope to achieve in the next few days. So I thought I'd start with those and try and give you a sense from those questions. So who am I? Well, that's quite straightforward. So my name is Mark Carrick. I have just completed formational studies at Queen's in Birmingham to be a Methodist presbyter and minister within the church. And we went through stationing this year, and in January we were confirmed with the Chesterfield churches, so in the new circuit, which is the Derbyshire North East Circuit, which is great. Previous to that, I've worked in Chesterfield. I've been working for Royal Mail for a number of years in IT, doing service management. And previously to that, I've worked in various IT departments across Yorkshire, really, and then to Derbyshire. Where am I from? Well, originally from Newcastle. My family pretty much all originated from there, although my brother was born in Cambridge. But we lived in Newcastle for the opening sort of 6-7 years of my life before we moved to Sheffield. And we moved to Sheffield largely due to work, parental work situations brought us down here. And I suppose in terms of more of a journey of faith, where am I from? background is with the URC church. Went to the URC church in Newcastle as a youngster, and then transferred to Dawn Totley URC when we moved to Sheffield. And I was there probably till I was about 14, 15. And you kind of hit that point in your teenage years where you start to reevaluate things, and you start to think about where you want to go with your life, I suppose, what your career is going to be, and what you want to achieve, and things like that. And church was a funny one, because I was literally the only teenager. In fact, I was probably the only child under goodness knows in church. So and I just decided that really it was going to be a case of I probably wouldn't continue going if it was down to my choice. I was always going as part of the family and so on. And at school I was quite friendly with a few Christians, and they were going to a Methodist church across the road at Totley Rise. And they said, well, why don't you come with us and check that one out and see what you feel about that. So I started going there when I was about 14. And then there was just a realization that it wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about, I wasn't the only teenager going to church. There's quite a few people, and we started to talk about God and Jesus and the Bible and what it meant to be a Christian in a school setting, not just as an adult, but for us, relevancy to our time and space, really. And a fellowship group started, which was a youth group designed purely for sort of teenage people, and I started going there. And the nurturing and the teaching and the discipleship that we got from being in that group kind of made me realise that I'd been a Christian all my life because of my parents, because I'd been taken to church, but I really needed to make that commitment for myself, and I did that, as I say, around sort of 15, 16. I gave my life to Christ and said, I want to be a Christian, not because of my parents or because of tradition, but because this is what I believe in, and this is the relationship I want to have with Jesus. And so I joined the Methodist Church. It's easy to say the Methodist Church was the church because of other people and because of the friendships, rather than because of any history or theology at that time. But as I've grown into the church, there's been opportunities to move. When I was at university, I was at an Anglican church for a year, and I've had experience of friends being at Baptist churches, and as I say, from the URC as well. So there was opportunities to sort of see what the theologies were like. And as I sort of grew, I realised that Methodism spoke a lot into where my heart was, for things like social justice, for things like discipleship, for things like nurturing people into faith and growing them into faith. And that's not exclusive to Methodism, obviously, but it just felt like the ethos and the principles within Methodism spoke very highly. So that's where I'm from, I suppose, in a way. About my work background, well, I've mentioned that I worked in IT. So when I went to university, I didn't study IT. I went to study social policy because I wanted to kind of do something in the social sector, really, predominantly education, I suppose. There was a time I'd like to have been a teacher, but I enjoyed looking into health and housing and so on, and I figured that's kind of where I'd end up doing something. But when I was at just before I went to university, I was at a youth gathering for a Methodist organisation, a Methodist youth organisation at Cliff College, and we had a guest speaker, and he was talking about the calling of God and being committed to this life, and he said at the time he felt there was a number of people who were called to full-time ministry, to full-time work in the church. And he asked those people to stand up. And as I say, this gathering is probably 13 to 19 year olds, and 4 or 5 people stood up, and he just said, "I'm just going to wait a minute because I think there's at least one more." And it was weird because I just felt this like gentle push at the base of my back, and there was nobody behind me. I was just sitting on the back row, but I just felt this need to get out of my seat, and I stood up, and it wasn't a total shock in that sense. It had been something that had been on my mind for a while through the youth group and through what's this going to be when I go to university, and what am I going to do after university, and this sense of being committed to doing something in the church. It had started to kind of ferment itself. So when I stood up, it wasn't a total shock, but it was a shock in the sense that I hadn't realised, I think, the full extent of where my thinking was going, and perhaps where God was calling me to. But I went back and I spoke to my minister at the time, and just said, look, this is what I think I need to explore. And he said, well, go away, get some experience and see what happens. So I went to university and joined the Christian Union, led the Christian Union. I was one of the leaders doing the meetings and the missions and organising and everything else. Left university, as I say, with a degree thinking about social aspects. I went into youth work, did a year or so as a youth worker, and really wanted then to push on and go to Bible college or train for the ministry at that time. And I remember going back to my minister, and he said, look, I still think you need to get some life experience. And then life takes over. Family came along, got into IT pretty much by working in a housing association, actually, and helping out with IT, and that became a pathway for a career. Joined the post office, left the post office, went around a few things around Santander and Experian, and then came back to Royal Mail, and continued in a career of IT. But I just felt this calling that in Isaiah it talks about stretching your tent, enlarging your pathways, enlarging what you hold within your sphere. And God just saying, look, you need to be stretching your tent out. This isn't all that you are called to be. So I was involved in the local church. I became part of the church council. I became a steward in the church. I tried to explore different things. I felt a calling to become a local preacher. So, went down that road as well. Still felt at each stage God saying, your tent needs to be larger, enlarge your tent. And so I candidated for the ministry, was accepted, and as I say, have done 3 years at Queen's. And yet God is still telling me, enlarge the tent, go wider, go bigger. And so I think for me the journey is certainly not ending upon being accepted for the preaching and the ministry at Chesterfield. I think it is just another step along this journey of enlarging a tent and understanding where God is taking me. And I suppose that leads into what we hope to achieve. I think, in terms of a course, what you hope to achieve in a few days is probably that learning and that understanding. You take that back into your role and you apply it. I don't really think it's much different where I am now. I think there is still a lot of learning. There is still a lot of training and teaching through formal probation studies at Queen's, which will continue for the next couple of years, but more so by experience, by being with the leadership team within the new circuit, but also by being part of these churches at Central and Marlborough and Clown, and those in particular, but the wider circuit, and being involved in all churches, hopefully across that North East Derbyshire circuit. And it's the experience of being with other people and learning from them and growing as a disciple. That's the key for me, making life relevant for church to be a voice within the world today. So this is just another step. I don't think I've come to some place that entitles me to anything else, really. And my ambition, what I want to achieve, is really that journey to get alongside other people, to learn, to help them grow, to grow myself, to work in collaboration, and to advance the kingdom, to let the gospel be known within the circuit that we now operate, and the wider district, and well, everywhere we can, really. But to journey that together, and I think that's the critical thing for me. It's about being a constant disciple, following Christ, being in fellowship, in communing with other people, and just being, the best that we can be, and sharing and building God's kingdom. So that's a little bit about, I suppose, how I've got here and what we're going to do. The next stage is obviously, from the 1st of September, it's up to God and the journey and the path that we now follow. But it's a very exciting time. So I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible physically when church is open, but certainly virtually. That would be great, and hopefully getting to know as many of you as possible, and having that relationship together, that we can grow and learn more about Christ.
Well, thank you, Mark, for that introduction to yourself. It helps us all to get to know you just a little bit, and we look forward to getting to know you a lot better in the years to come, certainly in the next weeks and months to come, to start with. I said at the beginning, introductory session video to this devotions today, that Mark would be sharing today and tomorrow. I realised after I had set that all up and recorded it, that tomorrow, in fact, my dear friend Pam Webster is already in place with devotions for us tomorrow. So I'm going to hold back on Mark's part 2 until the beginning of next week, so possibly next Tuesday. You'll have to keep checking in to see when we have Mark again. So thank you, Mark, for today's contribution, and we look forward to your next contribution. But for tomorrow, we've got Pam, and then on Sunday, 10 o'clock at Brimington and 11:30 at Bolsover on the Zoom services, you're able to share with us. This weekend, my dear colleague Richard Harris is sharing with us God's Word. I'll be leading the worship at Bolsover. So God bless you, and I hope you're able to join us. So God bless. Bye-bye.